Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Winecast. After having done casts on some of Europe's biggest wine-producing nations, I thought it might be time to check out a country with a long history of wine production, arguably the longest history in Europe, but whose wines don't get nearly the attention they deserve: Greece. Now, Greece does have a long, multi-millennia in fact, history with wine, but we can cover that in another cast. Instead, for this introductory cast, let's get some information on the grapes you're likely to find, the styles of wine that they'll be made into, and the appellation system that's in place there. Starting with the grapes, one of the great things about Greece is, in spite of the presence of international varieties like Cab Sauv and such, there's a strong tradition of producing wines from indigenous varietals that you aren't likely to see in too many other places. There are quite a few of these, but here are some of the most important ones. On the red front, three varietals are particular standouts. Tsinomavro, whose name means sour dark in Greek, has a savory, umami-driven palate and good tannins and acid. Ayorgitiko, or St. George's grape, has a nose like Gamay and a fruity palate. Mavrodaphne, the black laurel grape, makes rich, raisiny dessert wines of the same name. On the white end of things, Assyrtiko is acidic and minerally with lots of complexity. Athiri has less acid but lots of lemony character. Malaguzia is aromatic and perfumey with lots of acid, and Savatiano has an intensely floral nose. Two pink-skinned grapes, Moscofilero and Rhoditis, that are vinified white, make light, crisp wines with citrus notes. International varieties like Cab Sauv, Merlot, Syrah, and others are grown in Greece, as they are in most other wine regions. But, with a few exceptions, they won't usually be found in wines made at the PDO, or top quality level, which is reserved largely for native varietals, but instead turn up in lots of wines made at the PGI tier, or below. An important exception is Muscat, especially Muscata Petit Gran, known as Moscato in Greece, which plays a big role in Greek dessert wines. The Greek classification system follows the EU quality pyramid structure and is divided into three tiers, each corresponding to an EU category for regulation and quality guarantee. Though many EU member states split up some of their versions of the EU tiers into subcategories, Greece divides every tier of their pyramid, including the basic wine tier, into two parts. Let's have a closer look at these. The tier that's equivalent to EU PDO wines makes a distinction between dry and dessert wines. The classification Onomasia Proelefseos Elenkomeni is reserved for sweet wines, and there are currently 8 appellations that produce in this category, 6 of them making white wines based on Muscat, and 2 making reds based on Mavrodaphne and another grape called Korinthiaki. The mouth of the bottle will have a paper seal with a light blue print on it identifying the wine as an OPE, a practice comparable to the seals on Italian DOCG wines. Though the Greek name for this category is a bit of a mouthful, it will usually appear in English as appellation of controlled origin on bottles aimed at the Anglophone market. There are 20, or depending on how you count, 25 appellations producing under the next subcategory, Onomasia Proelefseos Anoteras Piotitos, or appellation of origin of superior quality, and almost all of them exclusively produce unfortified dry wines, though you'll find a sweet example, or at least an off-dry here or there. The difference in the count depends on whether you treat 5 of these appellations that produce both reds and whites as separate appellations based on color or not. All wines at this level are produced with indigenous Greek varietals, though a handful of OPAP appellations allow some international varietals in their blends. Like the OPEs, they come with the seal that usually pokes out from under the foil cap on the bottle, indicating their status as a quality wine. But in this case, the printing will be light red rather than blue. Also like OPEs, the OPAP designation usually makes it into English or the local language where the bottle is meant to be sold. In the case of English, you'll usually see protected designation of origin or the more literal appellation of origin of superior quality on the label. Both OPE and OPAP wines have access to regulated designations for Reserve and Grande Reserve status. As with other countries that regulate these terms, the designation is based on aging, and to qualify, Reserve whites must age for 2 years and Reserve reds for 3 years. Grande Reserves add an extra year to each category. Typically, white reserves and grand reserves will be dessert wines since they tend to benefit from the aging more than still whites do. The tier equivalent to PGI contains another two subcategories, Tópicos Oinos, or regional wine, that often shows up on English labels as that term or protected geographical indication. Like PGI level wines in most EU countries, this tier represents a space where quality-minded producers who want to work in a less regulated environment can experiment, and it's also where you're likely to find wines made exclusively or primarily from international varietals, like Cabernet Sauvignon and others. OKP, or Onomasia Kata Paradosi wines, which means appellation according to tradition, was created to house two traditional Greek wine styles. Verdea, a white blend produced on an island off the west coast of Greece, and Retsina, a very famous Greek style that really deserves its own cast, made from Sabatiano and Rhoditis, and flavored with pine resin for a taste that's all its own, at least among modern wines. Finally, the lowest or basic wine tier in Greece is known as Epitrapezios Oinos, or table wine. This category recognizes a subcategory of sorts called cava, spelled either with a C or a K, for wines that have undergone a minimum aging regimen, 2 years for whites and 3 years for reds. Like the TO PGI category, wines at this tier can also have some interesting things going on, especially in those wines designated as cavas. As far as the wine regions go, there's a lot to cover in Greece, and many areas deserve a dedicated cast. But as far as great places to start with if you're new to Greek wines, the Peloponnese, a huge peninsula that hangs on to the rest of Greece by a tiny isthmus, is the region with the largest vineyard acreage in the country, and you should be on the lookout for red wines based on Aioritiko from the Nemea appellation in the northeast of the Peloponnese, and for red Mavrodaphne dessert wines from the northwest. Macedonia to the far north is also a major wine-producing region, and you can be on the lookout there for reds from the Nassau region made with Tsinomavro. There's a lot going on off mainland Greece and the Aegean Islands too, but one of them, Santorini, is very special. Known in ancient times as the island of Thera, a volcanic eruption quite literally blew the island to shreds, and what's left now is a small ring of land around an active volcanic caldera. The unique soils, thanks to the eruption, gave the Assyrtiko that grows there a mineral quality with lots of acid to produce wines that improve with age and are a real must-try. Santorini also produces a dessert wine known as Vinsanto, and while that's not to be confused with the Italian sweet wine of the same name, it's equally worth checking out. And lastly, the islands of Rhodes, Samos, and Lemnos produce a range of dessert wines based on Muscat. The appellations I mentioned are all either OPAPs for dry wines or OPEs for sweet. But, like I said before, there are some really interesting wines hanging out at other tiers in the quality pyramid, as well as other great OPAP and OPE areas to check out. So while I hope these suggestions that I've made are helpful and can get you started, your best bet is to get some suggestions from someone in the know about Greek wine whose palate you trust, either online or in the flesh. They're certain to turn you on to something that I missed. Thanks again for joining me for another Winecast. I love Greek wines and don't think they get nearly the attention or the play that they deserve. So I hope you'll get a chance to sample some and hope this cast has left you more interested in or confident about doing so. If it did, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have some favorite Greek wines, please let me know in the comments or just leave any old message. I love hearing from you guys. I'm your host, The Unknown Winecaster, and I'm out. Enjoy the grape, but always enjoy it responsibly.